I felt like I never saw James Harden get into his bag, Key. Rotations were really weird last night. Him and LaMarcus Aldridge, that chemistry is so far off. He has better chemistry with Nick Claxton than he does with LaMarcus Aldridge. And I started thinking last night, I'm watching, I'm like, all right, Mike D'Antoni's not there. It puts a lot more pressure on Steve Nash with a lot of the sets that they're doing with Jacques Vaughn. I do think that James Harden will eventually find it. But, like, there's some gaps here with this team, man. They're older. A lot of their bigs can't move the same way defensively. I I just watched Miami.
So you were there. You were courtside.
I was courtside. Miami is
there's
the best
Jay. There's Jay-Z.
Team.
Yeah.
Miami, Milwaukee Bucks are the two best defensive teams. The Knicks are probably there too in the Eastern Conference, but they swallowed them up last night. And I'm like, I wonder what this team could be with Kyrie. And that's the question you're going to start always asking.
I want to
James
talk
can
about
get in his
Kyrie.
bag. They can be there, but Kyrie is the missing piece for this team.
Let's talk about Kyrie.
Into the year, though.
Yeah, but still,
you got another 70-something games to go.
That's what I'm saying. I think they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But Kyrie is the missing link for them to be where they need to be.
Let's talk Kyrie.
Because he covers up a lot of these other issues.
A lot of people, including me, noticed with Boston, without Kyrie, they seem to be at least as good as they were with him. Hold on, you're as good as Kyrie is. You lose a player like that, and if anything, maybe you get a little better. Same thing with the Nets 2 years ago, right? Same thing. Or when he got to Brooklyn, it was like, wait a minute, why isn't the team much worse without Kyrie? If you pointed out then, you got to point out now that with Kyrie last year, without KD, just Kyrie and Harden, they were killing the game. And without Harden, but still with Kyrie and KD were smashing the Bucks. Kyrie does seem to be the missing ingredient on this team. Why do you think that is, Jay?
I think when you have offensive firepower like Kyrie, James Harden, and KD, it covers up a lot of the flaws. Because you're scoring at such a high clip all the time, right? Because they're so special of players. You know, now when one guy's off, it's a struggle for this team. Like, what are the chances of two guys being off? Not high.
What about the fact that Kyrie has said publicly KD's the first scorer he's ever played with where he could defer because he's even better than him? And so, like, when he can play with KD, he can be a point guard. And with Harden, he gave Harden the ball, said, you're the point guard. So that frees up Kyrie to kind of just play loose and be himself.
What's the panic, though, here?
No, I don't think there's panic. I think that
because when you look at it, they've played 5 games,
mm-hmm.
right? You got so many more games to go that whether Kyrie's in the building or not, I would think that they're going to get it together, right? I don't think you think Minnesota's getting ready to do anything.
No.
And they're sitting at 3-1. You know, Chicago is undefeated, and Chicago will be a playoff team. But do you think Chicago could beat the Nets when they're fully geared up mid-year?
I think it would be an interesting series.
Yeah, they'll lose an interesting series.
If Kyrie's not there, I think it'll be a very interesting series.
But the Bulls are I thought that since they made the offseason moves, they're going to be good.
There's no question with Zach LaVine and company and Ball and Caruso over there now. And who am I missing?
DeMar DeRozan.
Guys, they
so they got a team. But I'm just saying, when you start to look at the Brooklyn Nets 4 or 5 games into the season and their record is less than 500, don't panic in this situation.
So can I tell you something else I saw last night? I'm not panicking, but I did see a veteran world championship coach in Eric Spoelstra run circles around Steve Nash. And I think as you start getting deeper into basketball, the evolution of where Steve Nash goes as a head coach will determine how far I think the Nets can go as well.
Let's stay right there on the coach. So there are at least 3 layers with Harden. To his own admission, he hasn't really played pickup and gotten ready because he's rehabbing, right? So he's not where he wants to be. That's 1. 2, we mentioned Kyrie's absence and how, in a weird way, he's kind of the glue guy on this team. Legs and I were joking about this on the air yesterday. And now 3, and I'm not putting them in order of importance. I'm just saying here's another level. They had D'Antoni on the bench last year. You mentioned this, Jay. D'Antoni and Harden can roll out of bed. Here's the ball. We know how to do this, right?
Offensive genius.
D'Antoni is not there this year. How much of an impact is that having on Harden?
I think James Harden will be okay, but that familiarity and having a guy like that on the sideline that understands what positions of the floor he needs to put you in so you could be at your optimal best, I think is a huge missing thing. You know, talk about another huge missing piece. Jason Kidd, I think, is also another huge missing piece for the Los Angeles Lakers.
We're also struggling.
Frank Vogel is a defensive-minded coach. I don't think this team is going to have issues offensively, but still not having him there, I think there's something missing there too I think Jason Kidd could have unlocked the Russell Westbrook situation a lot sooner. It's still going to happen eventually, but I think he would have found ways to have these guys operate with LeBron and Russell on the floor. I'd much rather have Jason Kidd on that staff than having him be in Dallas. So, still very early. I get all this. I'm just talking about being in the trenches, seeing what you see as teams need to work through and how they need to get better, Keith.
Yeah, and even James Harden's shots last night were nice open looks. They just wasn't falling.
Yeah, there is something, though.
It was
Keith,
almost like it not out of shape, but not at the shape he needs to be this early in the season.
Can I geek out for 1 second? You know,
Sure,
sometimes
why
when I
not?
hear you talk about the routes that you run, it's going to take a major adjustment by Harden not to play into contact. A lot of his game is suited
Fourth
around
layer.
playing into contact all the time, and they're making it a huge stance in the league not to call that. And last night, I still see a lot of that from him.
Fourth, that's
Like breaking arms, doing all that stuff, and they're not calling it. And he's looking like,
this one here.
yeah, like if you guys can't see it because if you're in your car, but there's a pole, right? Like he will rake through arms, and the refs are looking at him like, we ain't calling that no more.
right there. So now 4 layers. He had to rehab one, so he couldn't play enough. D'Antoni's not there is another. Kyrie's not there is another. And now they're enforcing the rules differently. Again, foul calls are supposed to be there so you get a flowing kind of game so the defense doesn't act up. Offensive players have manipulated the rule, just like in baseball. Hitters' work counts. Balls and strikes, walks are there to force the pitcher to throw strikes so we can watch guys swing the bat, not so we can watch them draw walks. No one wants to see guys draw walks or shoot free throws, right? But guys like James Harden have manipulated that. And can the Nets hold up playing that fast to protect the rim? Questions all around for all teams for sure. What about that, Jay? The Bucks kind of won with as Toronto did with against a compromised Golden State team. The Bucks won in the first round against a compromised Nets team and almost lost.
Well, not even the first round. I mean, they swept Miami in the first round.
Second round, yeah.
Swept Miami in the first round. Miami had COVID issues the whole season. They never really got their rhythm playing, but you can only play the people in front of you. Give the Bucks credit on that. The game with Brooklyn, that series goes to 7, where it goes into OT, a prolific performance by Kevin Durant. The Nets still had a chance to win that. The Bucks won that. Then they played Atlanta in the Eastern Conference Finals. They didn't play Philadelphia, which is a team they should have played. Now, regardless of whether Joel Embiid having 8 turnovers, Ben Simmons not shooting the ball, Doc Rivers really not giving them the right sets that they needed in order to win that game. And then they played Phoenix. They didn't play the Lakers in the NBA Finals. They played Phoenix, which was a team that was playing out of their mind. Give a lot of love to CP3 and Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. But it felt like it was a byproduct of them having the right road. I'm not taking anything away from the Bucks. You can only play the teams in front of you. But if you're still looking about who they played, that matters. We talk about that on this show. We talk about in the NFL. Oh, the Panthers are 3-0. Well, look who they played. Like, who you play matters to when you win a championship. So my thing is looking at the Bucks. They are still right there. But based upon what I've seen this year, thus far, I still would have the Brooklyn Nets and the Lakers slightly favored over the Milwaukee Bucks.
Jay, Milwaukee didn't grow from their experience from last year?
1,000%. 1,000%, Key. I'm not saying that they didn't. Obviously, getting Grayson Allen really helps. I think with Dante DiVincenzo, that he was out last year. Losing P.J. Tucker hurts. Like, it's certain parts that I think for this team you're starting to wonder a little bit about. But I still think they are there. Key, let me ask you this question, because you watched the Hoops games with me last year. When you watched them, did you feel like they were the overwhelming favorite last year? Would you say, knowing what you've seen them play last year, are they the favorite this year for you?
Well, they grew on me, right, because there was so much reservation about what we were going to get out of Giannis. But he showed me something. Remember, I told you when he came back off the hyperextension knee that was big boy to me. And from there, it almost felt like that things just grew for them. And I take the experience, much like you did. Let's go to your college career at Duke. You look at it and you learn from whatever mistakes that there were throughout the course of the season. So when you had the opportunity, right, to run it back, you did what you needed to do. And I look at the same thing with the Milwaukee Bucks. There was so much Oh, Coach Bud, oh, is he going to get fired if he doesn't get out of round one? Is he going to get fired if he does? Go ahead. Tell me all that stuff.
No, well, that was the conversation as it relates to scheme. Look, the Milwaukee Bucks are a very talented basketball team. I mean, they did lose P.J. Tucker, who defended Kevin Durant, the best we've seen anybody defend Kevin Durant last year, Key.
Yeah,
to the Miami
he was
Heat.
in him. He was
to the
in
Miami
him.
Heat now, okay? So I think that was a big loss for them from a defensive perspective. I'm not saying they can't be there, but there was nothing that last year, watching them make that incredible run, that made me think this year, considering the way the pieces have moved in the league, where I'm saying they're the favorite in the East.
Look, the fact
just because
is,
they won a championship last year.
The fact is there was a condensed schedule last year. And whether it's correlation or causation, there were more major injuries to star players last year than any playoff I can remember in the NBA. And so we got a funky result in the finals. We got the Bucks against the Suns. That ain't going to happen again. And I know that they both got better, but when you look at barring injury, okay, it could happen again, but barring injury, if the Nets were at full strength, no one's stopping them in the East. If they're at full strength, without Kyrie, game on. And if the Lakers are at full strength, they are going to be a whole lot in the West. And really, for me, it's with Kyrie, I think most people would say Nets are going to win this thing. Without Kyrie, now what? Are the Lakers the favorites to win the whole thing? You still say the Nets are favored over the Lakers without Kyrie?
I think there's some factors that go into that. Who gets number one overall number one seed? Are they playing the games in Brooklyn? Are they playing in LA? I love all the pieces that LA has as well. We're talking about one of the most prolific scorers the game has ever seen in Kevin Durant, and one of the most innovative offensive players the game has ever seen in James Harden, both in their prime. LeBron James, back-to-back seasons where he's coming off slight injuries. I'm not saying LeBron James is not one of the greatest players the game has ever seen, right? But LeBron James, we saw, how much gas does he have in the tank? Can you count on Anthony Davis? Now, you can make some of these same questions about Kevin Durant. Second year off Achilles injury. Will James Harden be healthy? I just think the age of the Lakers is something that factors into why I would still have the Brooklyn Nets slightly favored over the Lakers.
James Harden showed up looking out of shape like a hot mess in Brooklyn, rolled out of bed and was giving him 30 points with a triple-double on a nightly basis, and then wrecked the Western Conference on that road trip with Kyrie sometimes, no KD. They're a lot.
We were on air talking about last year that P.J. Tucker defended Kevin Durant the best out of anybody we've seen defend Kevin Durant.
Also a great locker room
Bobby
guy.
Portis ain't defending Kevin Durant that way. That's a huge miss for them. And nobody's sitting here saying are you having the Phoenix Suns back in the Western Conference Finals? Right. So I understand what last year was. That doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't take anything away from a chip last year. They are still world champions. Respect. It's not disrespectful to say that the world champions last year are not the favorites to win it this year.
What he's saying is like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, when guys like that step up in the finals, even if Drew gave you the sense that he was that kind of player, when you actually do it, it kind of raises it raises your own game going into the next season because you've demonstrated your kind of clutch ability to come through in those kind of games.
I agree. Don't forget about Miami.
Yeah,
still waiting about Victor Oladipo, Markieff Morris. You talk about P.J. Tucker, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero. I mean, look, there are teams that are replenished. They had a lot of COVID issues last year. Max, you made mention of all the injuries we had last year. But look, that's what it takes to win a championship. Right, Key? All the things need to fall into line in order for it. We talked about Tampa Bay last year, Key. You broke down on our show the road that they had